Hey, what's up, football family? It is nice to talk to you again tonight, especially since the Alliance of American Football League has officially kicked off and we are finally starting to talk about some alternative football besides the NFL. So it was a fantastic weekend. Very great. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it. I got Apollo here. He's not named after the Orlando Apollos, who was named that long before they existed, but he joins me every single week. Every week, all the time. So I'm going to just go ahead and start breaking down my thoughts and some of the stats from each of the games from this opening weekend of the Alliance. And I'll talk about a couple other things later on. But let me just start. So first night, Saturday night, they had two games on CBS that were played at the same time, which I honestly think was a mistake to have two different games on at the same time, mainly because you split you couldn't watch both games at the same time, and the app was very slow in terms of the video feed. I don't know. I've heard some things that some people were having that difficulty watching the games. I was actually at an Atlanta Legends season ticket holder watch party here in Atlanta for Atlanta Legends. And obviously in Atlanta, we had the Orlando-Atlanta game. So I was watching that. And I had to go and find the San Antonio and San Diego game later to watch. So I'll get into my thoughts on all that a little bit later. But first, let's just start breaking down the games. I'll start with the San Diego Fleet and the San Diego Commanders. I have the box score here. It wound up being 15-6. It was that was the more entertaining of the two games on Saturday, by far, even though the offensive lines for pretty much nearly every team in this league so far is not good. But let's be honest, that's the whole point of this league, is to improve offensive line play and quarterback play overall. So if anything, they just kind of prove their point on why they need to exist, is they need offensive linemen and quarterbacks and also officials. I'll get to that also. So Mike Berkovich, so the San Diego Fleet wound up losing to the San Diego Commanders 15-6. Mike Berkovich for San Diego, 15-25, 176 yards with two interceptions. And then Nelson came in. He went 5 for 10, 68 yards and one interception. Also, Mike Berkovich got the first sack was the biggest highlight reel of the entire weekend, was that sack on Berkovich this weekend where his helmet went farther than the ball did. That was quite impressive. I'm kind of curious about what the concussion protocol is. I'm fairly certain he probably should have came out of the game if they were following NFL concussion protocol, but let's not get into that. San Antonio, Logan Woodside, who looked great, honestly. He went 18 of 36 for 255 yards. He also threw two interceptions. But they had one rushing touchdown from Kenneth Farrow. Receiving, the leading receiver for San Diego, Gavin Escobar, had 66 yards. Brian Brown also had 66 yards. Mikhail McKay for San Antonio had 80 yards, and Alonzo Moore had 78 yards. So San Antonio and San Diego look pretty good. Everyone thought that San Diego at the beginning of the year, a lot of people were putting them as number one. the Arizona Hotshots are now in a lot of people's number one. I still think San Diego can do well this season. Obviously, losing their first game is not good, but as soon as they get the quarterback situation figured out, I think they'll be okay. Losing Josh Johnson right before the season started, Josh Johnson definitely is a better quarterback than what Mike Berkovich was, and it looks like Philip Nelson will actually get the start in the next game this weekend, which I'll preview those also this week. So that's my takeaways of that. I think San Antonio is going to be a very good team. This was a very low-scoring game overall. A lot of the games were very low-scoring. Some of them were more high-scoring, but the but like others are even more low-scoring in terms of. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, so let me just start talking about the game I watched on Saturday Night Live, which, being a Falcon season ticket holder, was not good. The Orlando Apollos won 40-6. But honestly, my takeaways is Garrett Gilbert looked amazing. The Apollos offense was on point. They are probably the best offense in the league based off what I saw this past weekend. Even in the rain, they were able to move the ball well. Atlanta definitely was not showing the fact that they couldn't really move the ball hardly at all. They were never able to, like, there were so many missed tackles. And it also didn't matter whether or not the offense was, like, if it was a running play or pass play, the offensive line just couldn't block. Now, I could say that about a couple of the other teams, which, like I said at the top of the broadcast, this was the reason why they even started this league, was because they needed to develop offensive line and quarterback play. So let me go through some of the stats. Matt Sims, 15 for 28, 126 yards, 2 interceptions. Aaron Murray, 4 for 7, 38 yards, and 1 interception. Now, that one interception for Aaron Murray, really, let's be honest, he threw an interception the play before he threw that other interception. He should have 2. It just got called back, but that was an interception. The way I saw it, that Orlando Apollos player, I don't remember who actually did that, but that it was an interception. He threw 2 interceptions in 2 plays. So because of that, I really do think that Matt Sims should get the start next weekend against the Fleet, not Aaron Murray. As much as I'm even wearing a Georgia shirt right now, I am a Georgia fan, and I would like to see Aaron Murray get more playing time. I don't think he showed enough in his very short amount of time. Now, if Matt Sims comes out and stinks it up in the first half, I really think Aaron Murray should come in the second half. I'm really surprised he didn't put Aaron Murray in at the start of the second half of this first game. So I'm thoroughly surprised about that. But anyway, that's all I got to say about the Atlanta side. Garrett Gilbert looked amazing. That Orlando special play, that was really fun to watch. I like the fact that Steve Spurrier, being a Georgia fan, I still have to be like, hey, Steve Spurrier, you're a great coach. You're fantastic. I can't even be mad because he's doing such cool things. He's great. And obviously Atlanta doesn't really even have they have a coach, but who is the offensive coordinator? I don't even know. So that was a fun game to watch, even though Atlanta lost very hard. But I'm more of a fan of football in general in the league. So just because I'm a season ticket holder for Atlanta, I'm just happy to see an offense on this level do so well. And hopefully the season's not over yet. It's just beginning. So hopefully Atlanta can turn it around for the rest of the season. So then the next game was the Memphis Express versus the Birmingham Iron. And Luis Perez, let me just talk about that. Luis Perez looked fantastic, which being from a Division II school, I know he was the Heisman of Division II, but still, it's a Division II school. And he looked fantastic. He was tall. He was standing up in the pocket. He was delivering the ball well. He was doing all his checkdowns properly. He looked great. It also doesn't hurt that he had Trent Richardson to be able to run the ball whenever. That one run when Trent Richardson literally pushed like both his offensive line and the defensive line of Memphis forward like 3 yards, like practically all by himself. That was amazing. His touchdown run where he spiked the ball and got the 15-yard penalty, that was fantastic. He found the hole and he went through the hole. It showed why he was drafted so high in the NFL. So he was fantastic. Trent Richardson, 23 carries. He only had 58 yards, but he had 2 touchdown runs. Luis Perez, 19 for 33, 252, and 1 2-point conversion. Memphis, big old 0. They still don't even have a score yet. Christian Hackenberg looked terrible. Like he's not starting the next game. I think Silvers is starting the next game also. Memphis needs to really step it up in terms of whatever they want to do for the next year or next game. I'm not sure what they can do, how they're going to adjust. I'm interested in see what they're going to be doing, but the Iron look really good. So in the East, it's probably going to be the Iron and the Apollos that are really, they both look the best in the East right now. And then the West is a bit more competitive. So now talking about the West, let's talk about the Arizona Hotshots versus the Salt Lake Stallions. Arizona had 38. Salt Lake had 22. Josh Woodrum, Division F, he played at FCS Liberty. He looked really good too. He had a below average completion percentage, but he was below 50. Matt Lenahan also looked pretty good. John Wolford for the Arizona Hotshots, he looked amazing. He looked very good. He's from Wake Forest. His stats: 18 for 29 for 275 yards and 4 touchdowns. 4 touchdowns. His leading receiver was Gerald Presley, was Denham. So the Arizona Hotshots look really good. Really in the West, I think it'll either be, the West is very competitive. The West is going to be the side of this league where everyone's going to be playing each other and playing each other very well. I do think the Hotshots will wind up winning the Western side. But as like the Western Conference Finals will be Arizona Hotshots versus whoever else can make it out of that side. And right now, I do think in the East, it's probably going to be the Apollos and the Iron. I really do. I hope the Legends can turn around, and if they wind up winning and hosting the playoff game in the East, I'd be so excited. But I don't see that happening. I really do think it's probably going to come down to the Iron and the Apollos. So with that, let me start talking about next week's games. You got Atlanta at San Diego. That's going to be a very big game into seeing. Essentially, if Atlanta doesn't do well this game, they'll then be down two games, which when the league is as short as it is, being down 2 games is not good. At that point, you're nearly stuck. Now, granted, it's not a conference game. It's against San Diego, but we don't really need to be down that far. I just started with Atlanta just because it was the first one on my mind. So that's on Sunday. So let me go through. Salt Lake is the first one. That's going to be on TNT at 2 p.m. Salt Lake at Birmingham. That's going to be very interesting because Salt Lake only narrowly lost to the Hotshots, which I'm thinking is probably one of the best teams in the league. And then Birmingham also looked very good. So that's going to be a very interesting game. Then Arizona travels to Memphis at 8 o'clock on Saturday. That's going to be on NFL Network. That's going to be interesting because Memphis didn't score a single score, and then they're also going to go up against one of the more high-powered offenses next week in Arizona. We're going to see one thing that was also kind of interesting this week is every single home team won. So is home field advantage really a thing in this league? Like, will somehow Memphis turn it around and do really well in Memphis against Arizona? I'm not sure. They didn't really look good. I don't know if just being at home in a league like this where they haven't even played, this will be the first home game period, whether or not. Now, the marquee game of the week is going to be on CBS Sports Network at 4 p.m. on Sunday, Orlando versus San Antonio. That is going to be a very interesting game because it's the only matchup where both teams have won, and it's the only matchup where and it's going to be in San Antonio, where one high-powered offense. Now, San Antonio's offense didn't look as good as the Apollos, but San Antonio's defense looked very good. So can San Antonio's defense slow down the Orlando Apollos offense and Garrett Gilbert? We'll see. I'm very excited for that game. That game should be very fun to watch. That's my favorite game this week is the Orlando San Antonio game. That's going to be the most entertaining. So my takeaways for the weekend as a whole, I think it was good. Offensive line play needs to get better. For the Atlanta Legends, one of the big things was tackling. Their tackling was atrocious, which, considering it's a defensive-minded head coach because he was their defensive coordinator before Childress left, the fact that their tackling is bad is not a good sign. I'm going to try not to talk too much about the Apollos. Or the Legends, sorry. The Atlanta Legends and the Apollos game. It's just that's the one that's forward in my mind, being a Legends season ticket holder. Now, other takeaways from the league, I'm amazed at how much the NFL is supporting this league. having it on NFL Network. And also I saw a highlights package on their NFL YouTube page for the Alliance. So I think they're really getting behind the Alliance. And I'm wondering if that has something to do with they're worried or they're trying to support one of these leagues as opposed to they want to prop up the AAF because the AAF is going very NFL centric, whereas the XFL seems like they're not going to be as rah helping the NFL as much as the AAF as the Alliance is going to be. So I'm very happy to see that the NFL is supporting this league and that people seem to be engaging with it. Couple things that is kind of hurting that engagement. The app that they released, it's essentially just a mini game. They barely have any live streaming. They had live streaming on the first night, but the CBS Sports Network games were not live streamed, and neither was the NFL Network game. All they had was this mini game. I didn't play it at all on Saturday. On Sunday, I tried for the first 2 afternoon games, and the mini game was behind like 2 to 3 plays. I couldn't get it synced up with the TV. Actually, the mini game was ahead 2 to 3 plays, and the TV was behind. So I would see what would happen on the mini game first, and then I would see the actual play. It was very annoying, very unintuitive. I really do wish that it was more like a DraftKings style fantasy game as opposed to this guess what play will be played next. I do feel that this might be quite fun when I finally attend a game in person. I'm going to leave the app on my phone until I go to the first Atlanta Legends home game and see how well the app mixes while you're at the game. If it matches up, if it's very far behind as opposed to too far ahead, then it doesn't work at home or at the game, which really they need to improve the at-home experience. Let's be honest, they're not going to get very large attendance. The highest attended game this week was just under 30,000 in San Antonio, which was a great turnout. But some of the other games, there wasn't that well attended. One of the ways that this league mentioned that they would be trying to get revenue is through gambling and fantasy football. This game, while somewhat interesting and somewhat cool, is not fantasy football. It's a mini game. To me, it's not as engaging as DraftKings. When I'm watching the game, I'd rather actually watch the game. Before the game, I want to pour over the stats and decide who I think is going to do well and progress that through the year. I don't think the league is big enough for a season-long fantasy league where you have a traditional style football league, but I think a DraftKings daily fantasy style game for each weekend would be perfect. But they don't have that on this app, and the live streaming on it is not good. Also, the website. There's no replays of the games on the website. I thought that was one of the main things that they were advertising, that you could come back and watch replays of the games after they've aired. And that's not available. To watch the San Diego game, I had to go to YouTube, and I found a guy who uploaded the entire game. And that's how I watched the game. Since I wanted to watch the whole game, I didn't want to watch just the highlight package. I wanted to watch the entire game. So that is a very big mistake. Now, it's just the first week. Hopefully some of these things, if it doesn't get fixed this year, hopefully it gets fixed next year. we'll see how the mini game turns out in when I'm actually at the game. See if I feel differently about it. But right now, I think the mini game is a big misstep. Just a very bad design game, and I don't think true football fans are going to enjoy that game in the long term. It's fun for a little bit, but it's not fun in the long scheme of things. Another problem, the replay officials. I love the idea that the replay officials they can talk. You hear what they're talking about as they're breaking down the calls. Now, I don't know what's going on, but like in the Birmingham Memphis game, there was one call that was completely and utterly blown. If you watch a game, you probably know what I'm talking about. The catch that was ruled a catch by the iron to Patton, it clearly touched the ground. But the replay official, for some reason, never saw that angle. And I'm like, okay, how did he not see that angle? Is he looking at a TV that's worse than mine? If that's somehow possible, that they didn't give him a high resolution TV and he can't freaking see that the ball hit the ground, then that's a huge misstep. Like, how is that even possible? That the replay official, I remember when the Arena League first started doing this, where you can hear the replay official. He was standing in front of like a 47-inch plasma screen TV. He could see everything. And then, but in these shots, the replay official is standing, like sitting there in a little chair, and they're looking at something with their headset on, but you don't know what they're looking at. I don't know if their screen that they're looking at is any more high resolution than like a 1980 CRT TV with like the freaking yellow, white, and red. Like, so that needs to be fixed. They need to make it so we know that they're seeing exactly as good of pictures as we're seeing at home. The fact that the commentators during the Iron and Express game, they literally said that that the call like was blown. Like the commentators did. Like, why don't we just let the commentators be the replay officials? Like, and even the refs on the field, after the one guy called it a catch, but then the officials, as they were talking to the replay official, they were like, hey, we think it's an incomplete pass. But then the replay official was like, well, there's no video evidence showing that it's a catch, other than the fact that it blatantly touched the ball on the far end zone shot. So if the replay officials are not even gonna get the right calls right, what's the point in having them? The officiating needs to get better also. It is showing the reason why these officials, which are mostly college officials, are not in the NFL. And it's making me realize how good the NFL refs really are. Yes, they blew the call in the NFC Championship game, but that happened so little. This was only 4 games, and there were quite a few blown calls. These officials need more time and more development, which hence this is why this league exists, is to give these officials time and development. So eventually maybe they could be in the NFL. And also, I saw lots of female refs, which is also very, very good. Very excited to see more women being engaged, both as coaches and as referees. So that's a good thing. I want to say that. I love the 2-point conversion thing, how you had to go every single time. I thought they were just going to give them 7 points, and if you wanted to go for 2, you can. I'm glad that they said, no, you have to go for 2. That makes it entertaining. That makes it more fun. I like the overtime rules. We haven't seen that yet, but hopefully we'll get that. Maybe I'm thinking that Orlando San Antonio game. I bet we go into overtime on that game. So a few missteps, a few things that need to be wrinkled out. That's my thoughts on that. Very much looking forward to week 2. Very excited to see how that turns out. Couple other things outside of the AAF has happened in the National Arena League. They lost 2 of their northern teams. So they lost both the Maine Mammoths and the Lehigh Valley team, so now the National Arena League is down to 6 teams. The Arena Football League announced that they are going to play in Columbus. So Arena Football League has 6 teams, and National Arena League now has 6 teams. National Arena League has a few former Arena Football League teams. They got the Sharks and now the Predators. I'm very curious on if they would ever just take the whole Eastern Seaboard and merge eventually and have a 12-team Arena Football League made up of all the National Arena League teams and the Arena Football League. Now, I don't think that would possibly happen, but with the fact that the National Arena League has started moving into the more northern markets, so they just came out with the New York Streets this year. That's right in the wheelhouse of where the Arena Football League is playing in the Northeast. So like if you had like a Northeast division and a South division, and then just give the entire West Coast to the IFL, that would make it more like how AAA baseball is split between the International League and the Pacific and the like East and West. That I can't remember. I'm not a huge baseball guy, so I don't remember. But like there's the Eastern teams and then the Western teams, and then they sometimes play each other every once in a while. But usually it's just split between the two. Like that would be a good setup for arena football. The way it's set up is more regional, and now that we have the Alliance, and then we also have the CFL, and we'll also have the XFL. Have it split up like that. But right now we're kind of 3 different leagues. We got the IFL in the West, Arena Football League in the Northeast, and National Arena League in the South, with like a couple northern jaunts to New York. And so that's happened. Hopefully the league is still entertaining to watch. I'm looking forward to checking it out. I only caught a couple games last year, mostly their playoff games. I'm excited for the Predators to be back. So that's what's happening in the National Arena League. They haven't released their schedule yet. Arena Football League hasn't released their schedule yet. We're only 2 weeks away from the IFL starting. It's going to start getting busy here. We're going to have the Alliance starting up, and then we'll have the IFL starting up, and then we'll have all those games to break down. We'll see how many I'm able to get through each week. And then after that, after Alliance ends, we'll still have the IFL, and we'll then have National Arena League, and we'll have the Arena Football League, and then we'll be getting into CFL training camps. And it'll just be gung-ho all the way to Thanksgiving. So thank you guys for checking this out. Please subscribe to me on iTunes. Subscribe to me on YouTube. Leave a comment down below. You can email me a question. You can direct message me on Instagram, alternate_football_podcast. alternatefootball.podcast@gmail.com. Leave a comment below. Smash that thumbs up button on YouTube. Please subscribe. And I'll talk to you next week after week 2 of the Alliance of American Football League and any other news around alternative football. Thank you and good night.